Our reading today from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer picks up where Julie left off during the Wonder Box. Kimmerer writes, "On one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, who created a garden for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree. But for tasting its fruit, she was banished from the garden, and the gates clanged shut behind her. The mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bent the branches of the tree low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast." Same species, same earth, different stories. Like creation stories everywhere, cosmologies are a source of identity and orientation to the world. They tell us who we are. We are inevitably shaped by them, no matter how distant they might be from our consciousness. One story leads to the generous embrace of the living world, the other to banishment. One woman is our ancestral gardener, a co-creator of the good green world that would be the home of her descendants. The other was an exile, just passing through an alien world on a rough road to her real home in heaven. And then they met, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve. And the land around us bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. They say that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I can only imagine the conversation between Eve and Sky Woman. "Sister, you got the short end of the stick." Look at the legacy of poor Eve's exile from Eden. The land shows the bruises of an abusive relationship. And it's not just the land that's broken, but our relationship to land. We can't meaningfully proceed with healing, with restoration, without restoration. In other words, our relationship with land cannot heal until we hear its stories. But who will tell them?
I just want to say amen to that reading. A few of you know that when I have time off from my duties here at UUCA, that I'm working on a memoir, a spiritual memoir. And sometimes it's funny because people will offhandedly say to me, not knowing I'm doing this, "What does anyone as young as 40 have to say in a memoir?" And I actually agree in some ways, at least about me. I don't find my life as interesting enough to make a memoir. But what I have seen in my life is that the stories of my family are. I grew up in a household of storytellers, which is probably why I sometimes hear back from congregants that my sermons are at their best when I'm telling a story. Now, when I was as young as 8, and certainly in high school, and even as a young adult, when I listened to my family's stories, I engaged what we call in seminary a hermeneutic of suspicion, which means when I listened to those stories, I listened with a raised eyebrow and a great deal of skepticism. See, I always kind of doubted or questioned if the stories that my family was telling were entirely accurate. And that's why actually I love writing this memoir, because I do all this historical research. And I'm trying to tell the stories that are both true in meaning and true historically. But there was a shifting in me probably about a year ago during my Wednesday morning 9 a.m. spiritual direction group. It's a wonderful group. All of you are invited to come. You could sign up at the bottom of In the Know. There's a Calendly link. You could sign up for the group through that. And we were reading a poem, and in the poem, the narrator was talking about this story. Caroline's like, I remember this story about how the narrator's grandfather had died many decades ago. Amazing story. And it made me think in my life how facts, accuracy, dates, names were always so important, and yet how hard they were to remember. But the stories were enduring. The story stayed with me. Stories are so powerful. They actually show how storying really is a way to pass wisdom from generation to generation. Stories help because it's not just, what they do is that they place a person, an event, an action in a context of meaning. What was going on? What prompted this thing to happen? What informed this person to be who they are? And then what came next? Our lives are like that, a story. And as people who study stories as their field, which includes people from all different types of fields, they'll show amazing things about stories. So for instance, neurologists, they'll notice when they put those little electrodes on people's heads and they have them listen to a story versus listen to information. When you listen to the story, both sides of your brain will light up. Literally, stories help all your synapses fire. Other people who study the role of stories in social movements, they'll say, oh, the stories will activate both your heart and your mind, right? You feel stories. And that's so important because it's actually, they'll show, if you don't feel something, joy, delight, love, anger, outrage, despair, you don't have much motivation to act. It's the feelings that do that. And stories embed and invoke feelings within us. But stories also engage your mind. They include a strategy. They often present some character moving along towards a moment of choice. And they'll show that choice and the result of it. All of us make choices all the time about how we live, how we should act, what we should do. And stories have a way of informing us. So for instance, just to use something where I don't have to tell the whole story, the Rosa Parks story is significant not just because Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, but because her example tells us that when we're facing oppression, denigration, that we too can choose to stand in our values or sit in our values that way. And so Rosa Parks' stories invokes a way for us how to act. And that's what Robin Wall Kimmerer was saying in Lisa's reading. The stories we tell to our people and about our people will shape how we act in the world. Are we telling stories that inform in a positive and sustaining way about how we should be in relationship with our earth? We need stories like that. Now, one of my great frustrations, disappointments about Unitarian Universalism is that we're a young faith, a little baby of a faith. We haven't put together the stories, the book of stories that we want to tell our people, our children, and we want our grandchildren to tell their grandchildren. But if there's a thing that I know about Unitarian Universalism is if we say, if something disappoints you, work with us to make it better. So I decided to be challenged and inspired by Robin Wall Kimmerer's invitation to re-story, and in part because I like to think of storytelling as a gift, I wrote a story for you for this morning, a story that combines our love of science, our deep attachment to the earth, and a good dose of process theology, just to throw in the mix, to create a new kind of origin story for us. So I invite you to listen with the kind of curiosity that we listen to origin stories with their strangeness and their twists and turns and their deep gaps of mystery, and also to listen to what strikes you as a question you want to hold on to help you live a good life this week. The beginning place was dark, ancient and eternal, hidden and mysterious. This place was the womb of the universe, a place of dreams and becoming, a place of imagination, not determination. This dark womb was held by twin sisters named Curiosity and Welcome, who could understand each other's thoughts without speaking. It was they who first sensed when their thoughts aligned and the change that had become. There was a throb, a push, wind, rush, and with that rush, holy beingness was born with a cry so piercing and activating, it shook like a trillion earthquakes. That clang of arrival still vibrates in all things, an echo of blessing of that great becoming. You could sense its resonance in your own body. It vibrates in the snail, the grass, the seaweed, the pebble, the falcon's feather, and the great sturgeon. Every ancestor of that one beginning carries that hum, the resident universal consciousness that we are all interconnected. So wondrous was this becoming that light was created as a messenger from the darkness. It traveled out with the news. That light has never stopped spreading the story and continues far ahead of us. Existence was just a baby then, doing what infants do, smashing things together and breaking them apart, consuming and excreting, loud. Each time it created a star, it would sound like a cathedral's bell tower with all the bells ringing. In other places, total silence. The deep, abiding silence of space. The holy remembered its womb, and so it remembered curiosity and welcome, and how to dream and imagine. The black womb was safety and belonging, and so no matter how the holy grew, it wrapped itself in the darkness of space to feel again that comfort. And that is why we both have day and night, light and dark, to remember the celebration of becoming and the faithful anticipation that preceded becoming. The curiosity of the holy existence led it to become many things: stars, comets, plasma, radiation, magnetic dust, magnetic fields, dust, cosmic rays, each with its own beingness, each manifestation adding to the understanding of the whole consciousness. Still, the holy dreamed. The holy dreamed of a great balance, mutuality, collaboration, of experiencing the harmony of the twin sisters. The holy chose to become a multitude within its oneness, its parts distinct and complementary, in balance with each other. Solar systems in balance, in motion, in flow. Solar systems that spiral as galaxies. In the holy's many forms, it became and became, while always remaining one, always dreaming of new beginnings. Still, the holy was curious. Part of the holy became two, a cosmic father and mother who came together with a drive to create life. They each gave part of their bodies to create their child, who they named Earth. Earth was both female and male. The Earth was they. They reflected both parents and yet was entirely unique. So precious was this child to the cosmic father and mother that these primordial parents curled around their child, holding and protecting them. The father had such love for Earth that he became the molten core at Earth's center, from which he encouraged his child to turn. He spoke, "Turn daily your many faces to the stars. Child, these stars were your beginning, and they are your destiny." The cosmic mother loved Earth with the fierce protectiveness that would later manifest in mama bears. So when Earth was hit by a wayward planet, Theia, the cosmic mother was fierce and distraught. Her child was forever changed, and some of Earth went back to space, where it became the moon. The moon, like a prodigal child, always wants to return to its family, which is why it forever circles with its face towards the Earth. If it cannot join, it can at least witness. After that change, the cosmic mother became the atmosphere around Earth to protect them. She would burn asteroids that tried to hit her child. So light a touch, so non-smothering was this cosmic mother in the form of atmosphere that the cosmic father had to hold her close so she would not float away. Each of us on Earth receives this promise that we will not drift away, but are held close by love. Now, Earth loved their parents, male and female, and how they were born from their bodies. So Earth had children from their body, transformed part of their body into bacteria, mitochondria, plants, animals, insects, male and female, just like Earth's parents. But still the holy within Earth thought that two, the binary, was too few. So the holy became slime mold, shifting between sexes hundreds of times, altering its form, adapting constantly. On Earth, the holy experienced love, loss, desire, tenderness, betrayal, compassion, generosity, community, and loneliness. It hunted and was hunted. It did not merely become and become undone. The holy was born and died again and again. The holy dreamed again. It wanted not just to be the story, it wanted an ability to tell stories. So from Earth's body, humanity emerged to become the storytellers. People were given 2 ears and 1 tongue, so they would know to listen twice as much as talk. To tell the holy story, people needed to experience the holy. What is the holy? All. The holy had become existence, and so all existence was holy. At first, people knew this. They revered the plants and animals as gods and siblings, and said prayers of thanks for the animals on how to live, or to the plant for medicine, or to any life, sentient or otherwise, when they ate them as food. Early people knew our ancestors arose from the sea because they sensed that homecoming when they entered the waters, which is why they and we use water to baptize or bless, why we use water to invoke a powerful legacy. Early people knew that their loved ones, their parents, came from the earth. And so when their parents died, they returned their bodies to the earth, to their ultimate parent. But they also put their parents in the earth so that children can still hold them whenever they put their hands into the dirt. But as people learned information, their sense of mystery shrunk. Their stories of reverence, gratitude, interdependence, shared life were forgotten. People forgot curiosity and welcome, and people instead gave themselves to a small life. They gave themselves to the questions such as what to eat, where to live, what to play, what to say, what, how, who. Their lives were too small for the holy to fit into. It went on this way for a long time and might have continued longer if it were not for a grandmother named Asherah. Asherah liked to weave, and her tapestries told the stories of the holy in its many forms. To help her, she would have her children and grandchildren sit and hold her warp and prevent her threads from tangling. Sometimes as she wove, she would tell stories, but mostly she would listen to their lives. One day, after listening to her loved ones' small lives, she tut-tutted. "My child," she referred to anyone who was listening, "living is not a problem to be solved. Living is an invitation." So her children began to look for the invitations and saw them everywhere. Another day, after listening to her loved one's loneliness, she gently shook her head. "You are of the stars. You are the dust of the explosions cast across space. You come from ancient fire. The waves wipe the sand clean for your footprints. Who are you to doubt your place?" As the children thought about that, she added, "And you are of the dirt. You are of the earth. You are the dirt you step on without thinking. You breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. Who are you not to be humble? Go, find all that has given you birth." And in their searching for their answers to Asherah's questions, the holy became alive again with new curiosity and wonder and welcome. So people would not forget again. They wove stories so 500 generations could remember. My dear ones, I invite you to search for the stories that inform how you want to live in relationship to your own spirit, to your communities, and to this earth. Go. Find again the stories from ancient cultures. Find your grandmother's or grandfather's stories. Find the stories embedded in our ancient world traditions, in science and in theology. And if you cannot find the story that puts your relationships right, that helps you live with integrity, and helps you leave this world better than you found it, then create a new story, participate in restoration, and share those stories with one another. May our stories be a blessing for us and this earth. Amen.